Alex Mwangi, being a business journalist, from your interactions with some of these experts, what do you think could have been done differently to make life easier during these tough times?
Yes, Okusa, there's more that could have been done. Many economies have been pushed to their knees with massive layoffs and stimulus packages being the order of the day. Question now is, what do policymakers in government need to take into account going forward to avoid the hard-hitting blow of a pandemic?
On the fiscal side, how do you think governments can prepare better for pandemics?
Really, the question is, do we have a contingency fund? Can we have a contingency fund? Because nobody knows when you'll have a pandemic or you'll have a national disaster that requires use of these funds.
Almost 2 months ago, President Uhuru Kenyatta announced the initial 53.7 billion shilling stimulus package to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic.
Judging by the size of our economy, what's your take on the current level of the stimulus package that has been provided by the government so far?
If you have to look at the tax incentives that were given sometime in April this year, the World Bank has suggested that government is going to be foregoing about 140 billion shillings or thereabouts. So if you combine the two of them, 200 billion shillings worth of stimulus, that starts being significant. However, when you look at it broadly, comparing it globally, you think about the US having a stimulus of 15% of the GDP, then it starts telling you that Kenya's is still not as much as we would have wanted it to be.
For the sustenance of financing the economy, Kenya, like many other nations, is hooked to borrowing, both domestic and foreign. The country currently spends over half of its revenue servicing debt.
We can actually not borrow ourselves into prosperity, but just borrowing without redirecting that money into private enterprise, into the agricultural sector, into tourism, to reopen all the tourism that has enterprises that have shut down is actually not going to be helpful to us as a country.
What's your estimate of the amount of money that we lose to corruption annually?
About 4 years ago, the estimates were about 1/3 of our budget. So if you had to put that into context, and assuming those numbers are still accurate, you're talking about a third of a 3 trillion budget. That's about 1 trillion shillings. So without a doubt, if we were to plug in these holes from corruption, without a doubt, this country would jump into middle income status tomorrow.
Do you think the amount of money that we lose to corruption annually is sufficient to cater for the pandemic's expenses?
If we were to channel those funds to the disaster preparedness fund we talked about, to addressing pandemics, we'd certainly be in a much better place as a country.